Greetings everyone and welcome back to a new video. I have huge news for you today. Completely game-changing, game changer, the Boimler effect. I know I'm not pronouncing that right. I'm probably never going to pronounce it right. The new personal space trait from Lower Decks that got put into the Lobby store. It was updated today during the patch. Previously, it had a 2.5% chance when activating a non-specialization bridge officer ability to reduce the cooldown of all of your other bridge officer abilities that are on cooldown down to their global. It has been updated to be a 17.5% chance today, and that effect is really huge. I've done some testing. We're going to go over some of the probability in order to explain why it's so effective. But the bottom line, the takeaway that I'm going to give you right up front here in the first minute is that this is a all-in-one cooldown reduction solution. You don't need anything else. Forget Aux to Bat, forget Photonic Officer, forget your Kraken setups, whatever you had going on before, you don't need it anymore. You can just use this personal space trait and it will cover all of your cooldown reduction needs. So, how does it work? Well, each time you activate a non-specialization bridge officer ability, there is an independent 17.5% chance that it will trigger to give this cooldown reduction. The cooldown reduction is not a percentage. It, unlike a lot of other cooldown reduction stuff, it just takes their ability, whatever it is, and drops it immediately to its global. So it gives you the maximum amount of cooldown reduction that you can possibly get. The thing is whether it's going to trigger or not. So you hit the first ability, 17.5% chance. Hit the next ability, 17.5% chance, and so on and so forth. So how do we calculate all this for all of my non-mathy viewers out there? Well, the easiest thing to do, rather than trying to do each calculation, which we could do, but it would be very messy, is instead we're going to calculate the probability that none of your abilities will trigger it, and then we subtract that from 1, because all of the possible events in our event space need to add up to 1. That's how probabilities work. They're between 0 and 1. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, what is the chances that an ability will not trigger it? We take 1 and we subtract 0.0175, so we're going to get 0.825. So then we need to raise that to the power of the number of non-specialization bridge officer abilities in our spam bar. How many is that going to be? Well, it could be as many as 13, but it probably won't be 13. You're probably going to use a couple of specialization bridge officer abilities, and also there are probably going to be a couple of abilities that you keep out of your spam bar so that you can fire them at the precise moment, the manual firing. You're still firing them, they still contribute, but for the purposes of this calculation, we're just going to say how many you're likely to have for, a spam bar. Probably going to be about 8 or 9, maybe 10 abilities. At the low end, if you're just doing 8 abilities, it's going to be around an 80% chance to trigger when you do one full rotation of your spam bar. If you're doing all 13, that chance goes up to like 92%. I will have the numbers, the exact numbers on the screen. That is absolutely huge. And you might think, well, that's still kind of a disparity there. 80% isn't exactly 100%. How unreliable is this thing? Well, that's why I did some testing. The proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. I set up some hotbar tests, and in 10 cycles where I picked a target ability, and we're going to talk about this in a moment. What do I mean by a target ability? It never once failed to bring it down to its global before it would have needed to. So it succeeded 100% of the time. Obviously, you would expect it would fail a couple of times. It didn't. Maybe in a larger sample, that's where you get into statistics. So maybe a better statistical sample would have produced different results. But it has been very consistent in my testing. What do I mean by a target ability? Well, consider this. How do you arrange your hotbar? Now, you're probably not going to change the way you do your hotbar too much, because oftentimes you want to trigger abilities in a particular order. But for those abilities where it doesn't matter what order you trigger them in, consider this. If you trigger the first ability, and let's say that this is one of those times where a full tray execution gets one trigger of the trait. If it happens on the first ability, it basically has no effect because all of your other abilities haven't been triggered yet, so they're not on cooldown. If it happens on the second ability, then it will have an impact on the first one that fired before it, and so on and so forth. So the later the ability is in your hotbar, the more likely it is to miss out on the proc when it happens. So you want to put the highest priority abilities at the beginning of your hotbar and the lowest priority ones at the end. Now still, I chose target abilities, the first ability, the last ability, abilities in the middle, to try and get a sense of this. Is it going to fail to pick up the ones at the end? And it never did. Even the abilities at the very end of the hotbar still got picked up. Sometimes it was kind of at the last second, but they still got picked up. So it's very, very, very consistent. But still, just a little bit of a tip to make it even more consistent or more impactful is to put those higher priority ones at the beginning of your spam bar, not at the end. Okay, so I don't want this video to go on for too long, but the long and short of it is, this is an amazing must-have. I hate to call it a must-have. It is 200 Lobi. If you can get your hands on it, you can buy it on the exchange. If you have the Lobi, I would definitely recommend getting it. It's an all-in-one cooldown reduction solution that will probably replace all of the other solutions in the game as the gold standard going forward. I'm not saying there won't be a place for the other methods in certain situations, but I do think this is an absolute game changer. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Go pick up your trait, and if you're sitting on some Lobi, now's the time to buy a bunch of them because you're going to want to cash in. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye for now.